So welcome. This is the OERColorado Adopting OER, Adopting Open Educational Resources webinar. I'm Joanna ISKME. I'm with ISKME and excited to welcome you here today. So I'm a professional learning specialist with ISKME. I also am a biology teacher. I teach students with severe and profound disabilities they're in a separate setting room, and I'm their virtual teacher. So I check in on classes at different points during the day and at night and all of that jazz after they've taken their class. So really glad to still be a high school biology teacher while I'm a mom, while I do a few other things. And so my main role is at ISKME being a professional learning specialist, supporting educators in learning about OER and finding them. So in the chat, if you'll share your name and role, what institution you are, how familiar are you with OER? Are you new to OER? Have you heard of it? Are you very experienced? And share something with us that you've started doing recently that has made some part of your life easier. Always nice to get some hacks from folks. What's new that you've been doing recently? And Mallory, while folks are filling this out, if you're willing to unmute and introduce yourself, we're so glad to have you here with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Mallory Clem, and I'm joining from the Colorado Department of Education. So it's so fantastic to see so many throughout Colorado educators here to either learn about OER or learn more about OER. This project's been going on for 3 years at the state level. I'll talk a little bit just about some reminders when it comes to vetting and adopting, since that's our topic for today. But we're so excited to continue partnering with ISKME as the site developers of the OERColorado hub and microsite. If you've been familiar with OERColorado, the Colorado River BOCES and Teresa Becker have been leading this project for the last 3 years, and we're in a transition period for CDE to kind of oversee this. But thanks, Joanna, and of course, all the ISKME team and everyone for taking time this morning to be here. But here on behalf of the state and CDE, and just really excited to have you all here today. So thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Mallory. And really awesome to see folks sharing in the chat box their role, some great organizational. I think a lot of people are maybe sharing some organizational features and things that they can do. Moving closer to work makes your commute time much shorter. Yes. And Kayla, that's interesting that you found OER during the pandemic. This idea of open and free is sometimes a challenge to help folks understand, like, is it really open or do I just not have to pay for it? So for those of you who have lots of experience, please feel free to share all of your ideas, links, all those things in the chat. This is what makes our open education community so much stronger. In previous webinars, we've talked about what are OER. So some of you have heard this once or twice, or could talk about it a little bit yourself. So feel free to add in. So we have a little bit of reviewing, and then we really want to talk a little bit about reasons for adopting OER. As was put in the chat during the pandemic, it was a huge advantage to have digital resources. So OER can be digital. They don't have to be, but many are. And there are some other really important reasons for adopting OER. We'll also talk about some approaches or methods to adopting. There are actually kind of some ways to divide your brain into thinking about what do I want to adopt? And we'll talk about how to evaluate OER. If you're really going to adopt it and implement it, then you're going to do this kind of close critical analysis of the resource. So at the end of today, we want to make sure that everyone can identify license and determine the compatibility of licensing. We want to make sure that you can look at quality indicators and then create a plan for yourself for adopting OER in the short and long term. Mallory?
Hi again. So just wanted to give a little bit more context for those of you who are new. And it was so great to see as you were adding in the chat that we have individuals from our K through 12 education space as well as our higher education space, which is really important to preface with vetting and adopting, because while those might overlap, perhaps our higher ed folks that are here today help with CTE or concurrent enrollment, and work with maybe our high school staff or high school students, or perhaps you're just totally separately in your higher ed space. Those do operate a little bit differently. So when we talk about OERColorado, that's under state statute as a requirement for K through 12. However, what a fantastic thing that we have on our hub and our microsite and through doing this project with under CEL and with the CR BOCES the last 3 years is we've really had a lot of partnerships in our higher ed space. So under legislation, higher ed has some different funding and requirements. So really the focus of this today is really going to be on our K-12 space, but wanting it to be beneficial to you all in that plus that higher ed realm as well. So on the next slide, I am just going to give some reminders on behalf of the state when it does come to vetting and adopting. So some things as we've worked with K through 12 educators specifically on open education resources, some tips that we've really shared are in the spirit of local control, all of you in our K through 12 spaces and our school districts operating under local control when it comes to teaching, curriculum, content, is really to work with your school district leadership, maybe your building school leadership, your curriculum specialists, your librarians at your local level on the best practices or requirements as an educator when it comes to using external resources. So not all of our resources on our OERColorado hub and microsite are aligned to the Colorado academic standards. Therefore, us at the state level, CDE, we really encourage you to connect with your local individuals, and that might be you all that are here today or any of you. So as your teachers and educators are looking for great resources, we've got them, but definitely work at your local level with any requirements or best practices when it comes to using these resources. So just wanted to throw that out there. And we did add to this slide, in addition to ISKME being a great resource, our OERcolorado@gmail.com email account. If there's any follow-up questions just about that. So just wanted to throw that out there that we really, of course, honor the local level and local control aspect of this, and want you to all to spread the word and work with your local school districts and educators on best practices for you all.
Thanks, Mallory. So we want to invite you to join the OER Colorado community if you haven't already. You do need a valid email from a public education institution, including public library staff, to create an account. If you are a community member, you can reach out to us to make sure that you get set up. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of demo for you what OER Colorado looks like. So OERcolorado.org, if you haven't visited here yet, I'm going to put that in the chat for you. And we'll take a second. We just encourage everyone to open up a tab so that you can kind of either follow along by watching on the screen or play along yourself. And so OER Colorado is what is called a microsite. It's its own place. It's connected to ISKME hosts OER Commons, which is a global digital library for OER, and anyone can create an account there. But resources that are on OER Colorado are resources that can be aligned specifically to Colorado state standards. And so you can see those that are showing up here. And those resources can also be the hubs and groups are specific to OER Colorado members. So if you need some support creating an account, feel free to reach out. We're going to do some exploring today, and you don't necessarily need an account to do that. But we do just want to introduce you to this idea of what's called a hub. So on OER Colorado, You might come here to search for resources. It's a great place to come find openly licensed digital resources, and we'll look later at searching and using the advanced search. But OER Colorado is more than just a place to find things, it's a place to connect and collaborate. So that's what hubs are for. Hubs are a place, we kind of think of it like a floor of a library where there's a lot of things going on in that area. And so you can go to different floors to find different things. So you might go to a spot where you're looking for resource, communities of practice. And so here you're going to come and you're going to look for, oh, here are the webinars for our series. Here are some different groups, some different hubs for each community of practice. So there's an AI hub. So I can open up that AI hub. And here I'll find all sorts, it's like a floor within a floor, right? And this way I'll find all sorts of resources and groups and collections of resources so that I can connect around a specific topic, or I might be looking for a specific geographical area or a specific content area. And so those are hubs. And the way to join a hub is to join a group that's on a hub. So we're going to invite you to join our group now. If you haven't yet created an account, then that's something that you would need to do first. And again, if you need help with that, feel free. This is our OER webinars group. And when you join this group, when you click on it, there will probably be a button here that says join this group if you haven't yet joined. Once you've already joined, it'll say contribute to the group, and you can submit new resources if you want. You'll be able to see our discussion board. So later today, I'll populate a new discussion board topic for you, and you'll be able to see the other members of the group and what recent activity has happened in the group. So later today, when folks save resources to the group, you'll be able to see what has happened kind of recently in this group here. So I want to pause here and just see if there are any questions. Also want to invite you that you can search for other groups and join one, or even create a group on your own. So would love to hear if anyone wants to unmute and share about another group that they're in or a group that they might want to create. Just want to take a minute here to make sure that everyone has time to get in the group. Okay. Awesome. Well, we hope that you'll find some new groups, some new places. One of the big pieces of open education is not just the resources, but the collaboration. So we hope that you're going to find a way to connect with others across Colorado. Open education is this idea of carrying out education, often using digital technology, but with a goal of widening and opening access, increasing participation, removing barriers. And so those open education practices are things that a lot of educators are doing, but sometimes we aren't used to collaborating with folks outside of our school building or outside of our district. And so OER Colorado can be a great place for you to not only find content specialists that you want to work with, but find other folks, like find that AI hub, right? Someone mentioned in the chat that they've been using AI to help them write grants. So this hub would be a great place for you to come find other collections, but then you also find other people, and then maybe who knows where that little wormhole is going to take you. Today I'll show you some collections. So we'll talk today about collections of resources that have already been curated for you, and we'll show you providers. And there's a really great way to just kind of expand your network and connections. And that's a big piece of open education. There are also two other organizations that you might want to connect with. There's Spark and the Go Open Network. So if you haven't connected with either of those, then today would be a great time to connect with them and see what they're doing. We do just want to take a second to make sure that as we keep talking about open education resources, openly licensed education resources, that we're using this common terminology about they refer to any teaching and learning materials. So it might be a whole textbook, it might be a single lesson, it might be a game, it might be a video, it might be an animation. And these are things that either exist in what's called the public domain or have been released under a license that allows no cost access, use, hopefully adaptation and redistribution. So we have this spectrum down here, and the attributions to all the images are in a slide deck at the end for accessibility, or in a slide at the end. And we kind of call this the spectrum of copyright, right? So just a quick review for folks. Some of you probably already know this. US copyright law means that anytime an author creates something new and records it in a concrete way, that author automatically has full copyright, all rights reserved belonging to the author. Now, if you're making something as part of a contract or work for hire, then the copyright rights belong to the person who owns that contract. And that's where licensing can get a little interesting. What's exciting is that we can invite educators, we can invite anyone who's creating work to start to use open education licensing. And so it used to be that terms of use were pages and pages, and you could share it here, but not there. You could make 20 copies, but not 21. And so Creative Commons created a set of open license that have specific terms that are easy to understand and easy to navigate. So if you've never seen these licenses before, now you'll start to see them on resources as you look around. Usually it's at the bottom of a page or where it says terms of use. Some resources have been entirely released with no rights reserved, and that's called the public domain. A lot of federal resources have been released into the public domain. And so you don't even have to give attribution, but it's always a best practice to do that anyway. So a quick review that this is what the Creative Commons licenses icons look like, and there's a bunch of legal information about the exact letter of the law about what the licenses mean, but we're going to do just a really quick explanation of it. CC0 refers to that public domain dedication. You'll see in my slide at the very end where I've given attribution, even though it was in the public domain, because it's just good for folks to know that you know to give attribution. And then CC BY is the main license that's on all of the other Creative Commons licenses. And this means that you always have to give attribution, right? Give conspicuous attribution, especially. So for many of us who do slide decks, we used to put it in teeny tiny little words right at the bottom of a picture. You'll see this picture has it too. It's like, what does that picture even say? This work is a CC0 public domain dedication work. That's really hard to see. And so it's important to give that conspicuous attribution. For accessibility purposes, the best place is to put it at the end of a slide deck or in the footnotes of a document or in an appendix at the end as well. So CC BY is showing up on all of these licenses, and then an author can add additional restrictions. So if a resource has CC BY, it means that anyone can use it really in any way as long as they give attribution. So let's take an example of if I sing my kids a lullaby and then I decide to record it, right? And it's recorded, and maybe I choose to share it out via social media. I can put a license on that recording of a lullaby. I can say it's CC by Joanna ISKME. And that means that anyone else can play my recording. They can sing it themselves. They can change it if they wanted to translate it into a different language, if they wanted to increase the tempo of the music, right? They can make any changes they want as long as they give me attribution. And so if I put CC BY on it, then that tells people what they're allowed to do. The next restriction is something called derivative, no derivative works. And so if you see this symbol, this equal symbol, it means that you are allowed to copy, distribute, display, perform, but only exact copies of the work. No modifications are allowed. So some authors choose this because they really want their work shared in the exact way that it was made. Some math pedagogical resources will have CC BY ND on them because they want problems worked in a certain order. They want mathematical concepts explained in a certain order. And so if you see CC BY ND, you can use it in a lot of ways, but you can't make any changes to it. Then we have the next license restriction, which is share alike. And you'll never see derivative works and share alike together because share alike means that you can make copies, but any copies that are made, the restriction is then that you have to share with the same license that I originally did. So if we go back to my lullaby example, if I wanted to put CC BY on it, but I wanted to make sure that anyone else's derivatives of mine that they made couldn't be sold for money or couldn't be used in other ways, I can put a share alike restriction on my license, which means that you have to use the same license that I gave it anytime you make a derivative. So in just a second, we'll talk about non-commercial, which is that last restriction, but SA means share alike. If I give my work a CC BY SA and you use it, you have to give your work a CC BY SA if you make a derivative work. The last is non-commercial. This means that anyone who makes a derivative or uses it in any way, shape, or form cannot make money off of that resource. So you can combine these restrictions in many different ways. The key is that now, once you know and see these symbols, you'll better understand how OER can be used. And the whole goal is really to reach, hopefully, the 5 R's, that an educator can retain it, right? So there are some places that educators get resources, but you can use them all you want, you just can't download it. And that's difficult, right? Especially if we're thinking about, well, what if the internet goes out and I need to be able to show this video, but the internet went out at my school. I couldn't download it. So the true OER is characterized by the 5 R's: retain, revise, which means like to make changes if maybe there are errors or it needs to be updated. Remix is to combine with other things. Reuse again and again and again, semester to semester. I don't have to resubscribe or repay. And redistribute means that I can share it widely and freely. And those are those 5 R's. So I want to take a minute and actually want to go back and just ask everyone to pick one of these licenses, CC BY, CC BY SA. If you were to make something tonight and you were sharing it with some colleagues tomorrow, what license would you be interested in using? You can unmute if you'd like, or you can put it in the chat box. Great question, Sarah. Is it a personal choice, right? So, um, you can you can decide, right? So let's say that you're a photographer and you made something and you're sharing it. You might choose a different license than if it's something that you create for work as part of your educational context. So just curious. There's no wrong answer. if you want to add additional information. Kudos to you, Sarah. She's saying CCO, public domain. Stephanie's saying attribution. I land in that attribution field too. I sometimes just like people to say like, oh, I got this from Joanna. Wasn't that nice of her? I also have found recently that I find it really important to point out to my students. I've really started naming to them when I'm using someone else's resource, because I think a lot of students get a little bit tripped up on how easy it is to access things on the internet, even to take a screenshot of it. Like, what was out there, I took a screenshot of it. And so I think we get the chance to kind of model for students that even if we're releasing it into the public domain, we might want to encourage attribution just to kind of hold ourselves accountable. So I want to now quickly go over, before we get into the adopting, how do you find OER? If you're ready to make the change and shift into OER, how do you find OER? So I see Rachel's got her hand up. I'll pause for just a second here as everyone kind of opens up OERColorado. Rachel, if you want to go ahead and unmute, feel free. Oops, hit the wrong button. No problem. Okay, so you can, of course, search for OER using a general search engine. And Google does have a way, especially with images, to use a tool to search for Creative Commons licensed image. Later today, we can dig into image searching if you want. But OERColorado is going to be your most reliable place to quickly find what you're looking for. Because, of course, there's this toolbar here when you land, but when you click on advanced search, then you can enter your keywords here. So you can see I like to use enzymes. It's one of my favorite biology words. And if I just do a search of enzymes, I'm going to get hundreds of OER about enzymes. So I might want to go ahead and say that I'm looking for something for 11th or 12th grade. And I want it to be something that I can remix. So I want it to either have unrestricted use, or I want it to be able to be remixable. So I'm going to go ahead now and search. There are a lot of other filters that you can choose. So if you know you're looking for a lab, if you know that you're looking for something that has captions on it as an accessibility feature, those are things that you can do here. You can look for things that only have ratings or comments that have been evaluated somehow. So I'm going to go ahead and click search. Oh, I put too many filters on there. Let's take off our 11th and 12th grade. Okay, so I have I have 4 resources that I've found here about enzymes that are remixable. And so you can start to see the licensing here. There's some that are CC by NCSA. So I know that I can make derivatives, but I'll have to use the same license that they provided at the beginning. So I want to give you a chance now to go ahead and search for something on OERColorado. We'll take about 5 minutes here. I'm going to pause the recording. As you're doing your search, just keep track of what you notice, right? Not only what you notice content-wise, but how easy is it to do this searching? So we want you to have a resource to look at a little bit later. So definitely we'll take about 5 or 6 minutes here. Again, I'm going to pause the recording and we'll come back to each other at 9:41. Okay, in the chat or by unmuting, would love to hear what you have found. Maybe you want to tell us the process of finding things. Like, did you find it really easy? Did you find some things were barriers in your way of successfully finding what you were looking for? Or maybe you want to actually like share the link to a resource that you found. So we'll just take a minute here. We've got a nice group on the call today of about 10 of you. Yeah, Sarah, go ahead.
I just have a couple of questions. When I hit save, so to like save the lesson or task or whatever it is that I found, it invites me to make a folder in my hub. So I have to be a part of a hub in order to save something. And if that's the case, does everybody in my hub see what I'm saving?
Great question. So it should give you a chance just to, so let's see, someone who wasn't in any hubs or anything, if they clicked save, then it would just let them save it straight to their My Items, right? Their resources, the folder that's in their My Items called resources. So if you're wanting to save it for yourself, you can just save it to, you should have a folder under your My Items up here that says resources. Or you can create a new folder in your My Items. So you might want to call that, I might be looking for biofuels. And so I can create and save that resource into that folder. To your point, Sarah, if you save it to your hub, then you can then everyone it's usually to groups, so it should probably be the groups. But then yes, folks that are in that group or that hub will be able to see it, and you can create a new folder there. So for today, I might create a folder called Biofuels ISKME, and I might put that folder in our OER webinar group, but I might actually want to put it under, so I might want to subfolder the folder under items to review. And then anyone who's in that group can see and interact with those resources as well. So if you want it just for yourself, you should be able to just save it to your My Items, make a new folder there.
Is there a reason why my items wouldn't show up? The only option I have is to put it in a group.
That is a great question. If you will take a screenshot of it for me, and then a little bit later when we have some more work time, I'll let you I'll stop recording and let you share your screen with me. When you're logged in, it should let you save it to your My Items. So if not, you might have found a gremlin, and we'll work to get that gremlin resolved, as I like to fondly call the little glitches that usually only haunt me. But yes, if you want to just take a screenshot of it, or we can look at it a little bit later. That's
Thank you.
unexpected. Mm-hmm.
And sorry to hog the floor, but do you have any suggestions for how to accurately search? I was getting a lot of no items found when I had quite a few filters on. Just wondering if there's a better way to search.
Yeah, I like to, so Sarah, to your, like you saw me do, I like to first do the search as specific as I really, really want to be. And then sometimes it does give me like too few resources that I want. So then I will kind of click the filters off at that point, right? So if I did the advanced search, and I think before I did enzymes, and I was doing 11th and 12th grade, and I wanted unrestricted and conditional. And then I think you saw me kind of click the filters off. So that's the way that I would advise, is because maybe there's a lot more that aren't in the public domain, right? Okay, that didn't help. So what if I take off grade 11 and grade 12, and I'm just looking for any enzymes? So I tend to do the really specific search and then release some of the filters. Other folks will go the opposite way, and they'll just search for enzymes. So I can take off all of the filters. And it'll show me the number of resources about enzymes. If you are finding that you're just not finding what you're really wanting, and you're like, surely there's some more out there, then feel free to fill out a help desk ticket. And so you can do that by going to the profile and going to Help Center. And we have digital librarians who can support you. So you can create a help desk ticket. There are some best practices that are listed here, and then you can create a help desk ticket. And so then I have to find the exact link. It's hiding from me right now. And then what we'll be able to do is get the librarians to help you find a specific, maybe we need to import some new resources. Maybe we need to adjust some of the algorithms, that sort of thing. So feel free to reach out to, oh, there it is, new support ticket right at the top. So if you're looking for something and you're like, I just can't find enough about enzymes, can you help? You might put NA here for the URL, and then that you are looking for, some resources. So you can always use that help desk. It also follows you around here on the right-hand side, so you can quickly submit a help desk ticket that way. Becky shares she likes using the filters. Kayla wants another clarification between the hub and a group. Great question. So a group is a spot just where you are collaborating with usually a smaller group of people. So this group is for just our OER webinar series. You can create things in a folder. You can have discussions. Anyone can create a group. So if you go to see all groups, anybody can create a group, and groups live here, or they can live on a hub themselves. So think of a group kind of like a study table in the library, right? And so you can organize your materials, you can collaborate. It's open for really anyone to join. Anyone can create a study table. A hub is a piece of architecture that's created by ISKME or the OERColorado team. And so those hubs, you can't create a hub, and they have a lot more architecture to them. So they have these banners, they have these different subsections. You can add slideshows, you can embed videos, you can organize collections. And so collections are another thing that are built by OERColorado staff and ISKME staff. And so they use coding and infrastructure that we make on the back end, and then we can organize and display them. And so a hub usually is where you're kind of bringing together multiple subsets, right? So I would expect that you might find a group for biology teachers, but then you might have a hub for STEM. So and that's bringing together multiple, or you might have a hub for biology, but it might include like AP biology and honors biology and oceanography and anatomy and physiology, and a broader array of different content areas. Great questions. Anybody else want to unmute or pop in the chat?
Me again. I'm the queen of questions. I noticed when you look for standards that they're Common Core state standards. I was just wondering why they weren't aligned to Colorado academic standards. And I see the science standards are next gen, but I know standards are such a weird thing. Just curious why it's not Colorado specific, since this is a Colorado specific resource.
Mallory, do you want to pop in?
Yeah, definitely. That's certainly one of our long-term goals. We're working with CDE standards and instruction, that unit. It's really the transparently the amount of time to go through each individual resource and align those individually. So it would take a big team to be able to go through and align those specifically. And we found the Common Core and Next Gen Science already had that infrastructure and development. And so that would be a long-term goal, and some feedback that we've gotten from standards and instruction is that that's a barrier to some of what we've heard from our K through 12 educators and under that local control conversation. The lack of alignment to the CAS is challenging. So it's something we're in conversation about, that we've explored, and what that looks like in terms of staffing and availability to go through hundreds to thousands of resources and align them. but it's great to hear from individuals in the field, including at the CDE level, that there are some barriers and concerns and hindrances with using potential OERColorado resources. Kind of like I mentioned at the very beginning of, talking to your school district leadership and your curriculum specialists and your librarians, we would love to hear that, okay, I did that, and something at my local level is that it really needs to be standards aligned in order for me as an educator or a teacher to utilize this. Might be an extra push that we need at the state level to make this database repository of resources most successful for our K through 12 field in Colorado. We're really hearing that we need maybe to prioritize a standards alignment to the Colorado academic standards. So a complicated conversation, a lengthy response to that question, but really there is the option to do it. It just could be something that we could promote with some really great feedback from you all, that would be a crucial piece to using this, is the state to prioritize the staffing and funding to be able to align those. So a great response, of course, right? Me from CD coming in with it can't happen, but it can't. What a state response that I'm giving you all. But that's my long-winded response, is that it definitely could happen, but we found that it's a much lengthier process than we anticipated. But thank you for asking. That helps me kind of take that back to the higher ups at CDE and just kind of say, how can we revisit this if that's going to be important for you?
Yeah, and I'll add on that at ISKME, one of the things that we have done to support our partners is we help run standards alignment cohorts. So we've had some state departments of education who used either time or funding to have teacher experts who knew the standards really well be able to go in and add those alignments. So that's something that, as you're looking at a resource, you can look at adding the alignment, you can align the resource. And so that's something that we have led at like a state level, where we had hundreds of educators who were working in it as part of a professional learning experience. And we did some training, but we were looking for folks who really already had that content and pedagogical knowledge. So we did an application process, but it is something that folks can look at and work to do on their own. And that's a place where you can also do it under like the comments. So as we go through and we look in a little bit at leaving comments, it's a place where you could say like, this is aligned to, and then you can copy and paste the standard. And so that's a really great way for individuals to be able to do it. Or if you're a curriculum coordinator and you work with, 50 different biology teachers, you might decide as a group, hey, let's do some evaluation. And so you could do a search for all of the enzyme resources. You can save them to a folder, and then people can move them around inside that folder to say like, hey, these have been aligned and these are not aligned, or these are high quality and these are not high quality. So it's a really great way for the platform to be a professional learning strategy, as well as you're working through resources. Yeah, and so that's a great point about being able to save. You can save in bulk. So if I'm looking at this particular set of resources, this collection has 16 resources. I can actually click this checkbox next to it, and I can save all 16 of them to a folder. So I could create a new folder in our group. I could put it under items to review. I could call this unreviewed AI resources. And I can save all 16 of these to a folder called unreviewed AI resources. And then as I'm going through, I can delete them from that folder. I can move them to another folder. It doesn't change the fact that they all still live on the platform, that they all still live in this collection, but I can start to make those folders for my own use. So I want to take some time now and ask you to either share in the chat box or to unmute and speak a little bit about why adopt OER. When we think about resource adoption, a lot of local districts and school units have their own process at which they're vetting resources. So would just love to hear which conditions, why do you think an individual teacher or a group of teachers or a district or a public school unit might want to decide to adopt OER? So I'll be quiet here and let you all put into the chat box or unmute because we love to hear your voice. Why OER? Why take the time to adopt OER?
The silence is killing me. I'll jump in. For me, right off the bat, OER, I mean, limits the rabbit hole. When you're looking for resources and stuff to help, I mean, I think back to my own lesson planning when I had 45 tabs open, and trying to find something that was going to work for me, and then not having to critically analyze all those, whether or not they were going to work for me, and then decide, can I pay the money to have something like this? But this just limits the rabbit hole with resources that I already know are aligned and vetted, and could potentially work in my classroom. So, and then the free component is great.
Thanks, Sarah.
I can share. Sorry, no video. Um, I was thinking we're a very small district with very few resources and very limited funding, and to think about and one curriculum person. Um, and so there's no teams, there's no, no district department. And I think, this could be a way for us to get more resources into the hands of our teachers that we can help design and build our curriculum with.
Love it.
Joanna, are you okay if I ask a follow-up question? Of course, just me being curious at the CD level, and I know, especially our rural communities, but every school district operating really differently. If you're in rural Colorado, the metro, when it comes to finding these resources, if it's OER and OERColorado or a Google search or teacher pay teacher, do you educators, is the communication in your district and at your school level from your leaders, the autonomy is on you all to find anything that can work in your classrooms? And or do you find limitations in that communication from your leadership on a vetting process or approval from a curriculum specialist to use things that you all find individually?
Well, I could speak for our small rural district. We do not have a process currently, and I'm thinking we need to develop that process so we can really support our staff with building, some high quality teaching practices, and that I would prefer to have a little bit more vetting in the resources that we're using. And so we really haven't had anyone who is a particular curriculum specialist or someone in the past. So this is sort of a new role. I know as archaic as that sounds, but we have been extremely local control and very autonomous. And I feel like for us to really make a difference and have some continuous improvement, and assurances for our students, that we need to be thinking about more about the process of what resources we're using.
Thanks, Becky. I know you're so involved in so many different things that we do at the state level. So love seeing that you're here. And you're always a CDE staff, so a familiar name. And Sarah, thanks for adding to the chat another small rural district perspective of giving teachers autonomy and no specifics or expectations from administration when it comes to supplemental material. So really great to know. And anyone at a larger district level or metro level have any perspective, especially maybe being in a larger space that might also not have any expectations because you're such a large district and it's really at the school level. It's hard to streamline a larger district, or finding that a larger district maybe has those processes just to try to be as consistent as possible. Anyone from a larger school district, K through 12 in Colorado, or even at the university level? I know we have some higher ed folks that maybe are on, huge campus communities that might have some perspective on how to have something consistent, if at all. And Joanne, I think if not, that might be identifying some extra support with OER at the state level throughout, regardless of district size or location. So thanks for those perspectives. That's really helpful,
Absolutely. I think we're in just a minute, we're going to talk about some different approaches to adopting OER. And like Sarah mentioned in the chat, sometimes folks are just looking for supplemental materials. And as Veronica mentioned, using OER because of the financial benefits to students, but we also want to look at financial benefits to teachers. We know that there are some places where teachers are paying for resources out of their own pocket because they're trying to find high quality access to resources, and that sometimes search engines algorithms take you to a certain website because that's what has been paid to be promoted. And so OER is a great place. OERColorado is always going to be a great place for you to start your search. And again, if you can't find something and you're like, surely there must be some things on here, that's why it's a great idea to be in some of these groups, because then you can kind of post in the group. You can, so let's say that you are in the early childhood education hub and you can join the group. You could put a discussion in here and it would alert the members like, hey, I'm looking for such and such. Does anyone have these? There are a ton of OER listservs that you can join as well. If you find OER out there that hasn't been added to OERColorado, you can submit OER from the web for our librarians to review. You can also reach out to your district or Department of Ed or me. Consider me your OER fairy godmother, and we can work together to make sure that we're continuously increasing the number of resources and how easy it is to find them. Great question in the chat. I'll have to get back to you, Sarah, about how many users are on the platform and how many are using the hubs. I can honestly say it's never enough, even on OER Commons, which is a global platform. We always say never enough. It's always a little surprising to us that folks don't know about open education resources. But again, a lot of that I think is going to shift as future generations of teachers kind of come up through their training and start to realize they don't have to pay for resources. They don't have to charge people to use their resources. So many reasons. And so we'll be sure to share some of those data points with you in our follow-up. You all mentioned reducing the cost. We also see a big reason for OERs to increase the relevance and timeliness of resources. So in North Carolina, we're going to need to talk about flooding. We're going to need to make changes to resources that look at flood zones and flooding and what happens to water when we get 10 inches of rain, and why does that equate to, multiple feet rise in a river, right? And we want to be able to customize to specific site contexts. So that's one of the great reasons to adopt OERs, because most OER are not going to come in PDFs. they're going to come in editable versions where you can make changes, where you have the licensing rights to make changes, add local site names, customize it to your specific district. If you're teaching a certain textbook or, book to your students in your English literacy class, and you want to say, hey, in this last book that we read about such and such, how does this character relate to it? And that's the beauty of OER, is that you have the rights and the resources and the right structures to make those changes. Also really important to meet your classroom demographics and the academic and accessibility needs for specific learners. So if you need to add a language translation, if you need to be able to chunk the text a little bit more for students who need that visual space for their brain to make sense, if you need to, change the reading level or challenge of the questions, those are such valuable things about OER. So I'm going to take a second here just to invite you to think about these three main approaches to adopting OER. The first is to just adopt OER very much as an individual resource, right? So I might adopt this specific lesson on enzymes and then later one on mitosis, and I might use this video on DNA replication. And so I'm just grabbing things kind of individually, and maybe someday I'll have a full compilation of resources. But if I'm just getting started, I might just start with individual resources that I'm connecting as an individual teacher, or maybe collaborating with others. And then, as some of you said, like, hey, we're curriculum coordinators. So it might be that you are going to create a compilation or a curation of resources, right? So you might go ahead and say, hey, for this unit, here are 3 options that you could do for enzymes. All of them are OER. And you can make them into something official. So if you're on OERColorado and you want to add OER, you can create a learning module where you can add a title at the top, and you could say, this is the section on enzyme structure. And I might go ahead and add some images, some videos, some links. I might add some specific text. Maybe I'm building a module for my students. Maybe I'm building a teacher-facing module where I'm going to share with teachers and say, hey, if you're looking for things on, enzyme structure, and then I might add another section and have this section be on denaturing enzymes. Right. And so then I can add all of these different sections, and I can create kind of an official compilation, which is then really great, because then when it lives on OER Commons, it doesn't live and die in someone's email account or someone's Google Drive, or if you're using Microsoft or a different provider, it doesn't die in that kind of digital folder on the cloud. It instead lives in this place where others can find it, others can remix it, others can use it. Then the last option is to look for whole courseware, especially in K-12 and in higher ed. There are entire courseware sites that are openly licensed. There are entire providers who have created, so Illustrative Math, K-12, EL Education, Open SciEd. If you're looking more at that higher ed level, OpenStax, there are just so many entire courseware now on OER that are great. For example, the CK12 textbooks, you can go in and you can reorder the chapters, which is amazing to me, because as a biology teacher, I was like, no, I want to teach this before I teach that. So we'd be doing chapter 7 before we did chapter 2, and my students would be all confused, and where are we now? And with OER, you can reorder, rechange it, and it makes it customized to your students and the way that you teach your course. So curious if you'll unmute or share in the chat box, which of these approaches do you think you and or most of the team that you work with are ready for? And Sarah and Becky and everyone else on the call, feel free to reach out to me after today for some more support on how to find what you and your teachers need. Sarah, I think it's amazing that a lot of teachers would be ready to start looking for OER at the individual level, and you can create some great scaffolds for them where you can actually share an open author resource with them. So you could add authors. So I could say, I'm going to add Mallory to this, and she and I are going to use this document to, share the things that we find for enzyme structure. Or maybe we work together in a group and we save everything to a folder, and then we work through that folder. For a lot of educators and just people, we do internet searches, and then we come back and we're like, wait, that is a different color. I looked at this before. I just don't remember what I liked about it. Did I like it? Did I not like it? Did it change? So OERColorado can be a great place for organizing those searches. The structure of the platform was created with hierarchical structures and organizational structures to help educators as they do those search not spend so much time searching. Yeah. So as educators are going through, one of the beautiful, brilliant things about the knowledge that lives in the brain of our educators, right? They know so much about their content and they know so much about what works pedagogically. And that's another reason why I love telling folks about OERColorado and OER Commons, is because if I just do a Google search or I'm on a different platform and I'm looking at resources, I can't see what other folks say about it. I can't always tell if it's the right resource for me. And then I'm going to spend 30 minutes looking at it. And then at the end, it's a PDF and I can't even use it. And I'm like, psh, I'm just going to make it myself. And that takes a lot longer. And we see duplicative efforts and we see bias show up in resources because maybe educators don't have training in assessment design. So what we hope that folks will start doing is they'll start using the evaluation tools that are built on the platform. So if we look, for example, at this resource, Biomass Creating Biodiesel, in just a second, I'll pull it up on the platform. Before we do, I want to show you, these are the three main places where you can evaluate. You can leave a star rating, which a lot of people are really good at. They're like, hey, I already do this on Google Maps or on TripAdvisor or on Amazon or on Target or on Walmart. I already leave these star ratings. I already leave comments. They make their thinking visible to others. And that's a really great way to help other educators, but also even help yourself. And Sarah, Mallory put some data in there about the different users. So let's see. Oh, there's so much on here about biofuels. I want to find mine. Oh, and so I can look by provider because I know the provider that I want. And so in a particular resource, let's say that I'm looking at, I lost my link. I'm sorry. Let me pull it. Let's say that I'm looking at my particular resource, which is called Biomass Creating Biodiesel. I wanted to show this one because it has this full license. It has this CC BY license. And so when I land on this resource, I do want to point out a few things. This is called a landing page. And so from this landing page, you won't have these privileges up at the top where it says publish, deaccession, or edit because I have super admin rights. But if you were the author, you would be able to edit the resource. And so we call this the landing page. It's going to give you the title and a place to view the resource in just a second, but it gives you the description, the author, the provider. And so you can see here that I could click on this. I always like to do it in a new tab, and that will show me all of the 86 resources from the Clean Climate Literacy and Energy Awareness Network. And so then I can look through theirs. I could search through this section. I can save these resources and then work my way through them. And so as I'm going through them, this is where I can leave a star rating. And of course, once I leave it, I can unleave it or I can change it. And then I can leave comments here, and you can give an evaluation. So if you're down a rabbit hole, I do want to show you what it looks like to leave an evaluation. When you are on a resource, it will say, evaluate this resource. So you click on evaluate and then you click start evaluating. And first it's going to ask, how well do you think it's aligned to this standard? So you might, it's aligned to 3 different standards: an environmental science standard, a life science standard, and a physical science standard. And I can go in and say what level of alignment I think it has, and I can leave a comment as well. And then from there, I can also look at some of the other pieces of the resource and see how well I think that that resource does different things for the students. And that lets me leave that feedback on there, and it'll start to populate down here for others to be able to see. So when I click on the resource, it is going to open up in a new window, and this is a resource from Clean, the provider. So it is taking me to their page. It is indexed, is what we call it. It is indexed. It lives on OERColorado as well, and it has an open license. So from here, if I wanted, I can copy and paste. I can move things around. I can add things, as long as I give attribution back to Clean that it's a derivative of their work. Oops, I had a different resource in here, this air fuel for thought, and it actually had an error in it. So I want to show you that if you run across a resource with an error in it, you can click this to hit report this resource, and then I can let folks know that, for example, the one that I was looking at, it had one that had a broken link in it. So I wanted to show you that if you run across a resource that you're like, I don't think this belongs here, or it has an error in it, you can use this help and support and this report a resource, and that'll help us go back and flag and look at it. So just want to give a minute to folks. For today, I would really encourage you to use the star rating and the comments feature. So we're going to take about 5 minutes here, since almost everyone found something they were interested in. I want to challenge you to actually put the comment down, right? Take your thinking, take what you found, put it in the comment feature of a resource. If, as I ask you to do that, you're like, no, that's too much. I'm not ready to leave a comment on something. Feel free to use these 5 minutes just to do a little bit more searching and saving. And we're going to come back together at 10:25 to do a little bit of closing. I'm going to pause the recording. I'll be here if you have questions, or if you're wanting to share your screen. I think it was Sarah, and show me something. So the next steps for the series, we do have another webinar coming up. So we hope that you'll join us for the last one in OER advocacy and leadership, and that you'll send a link out to your peers if they would like to be able to come. I'm going to share my screen again just to show you that if you are wanting a certificate for attending, there are some next steps to do, and then that certificate will be emailed to you. So if you want a certificate for attending today, please make sure that you participate in our discussion board. I just posted a webinar 3 discussion board, looking back again at those 3 approaches to adopting OER. And you have to be logged in and joined the group, and you'll see the reply. button, and you can reply and tell us which approach and why, and then what help you would like. And that'll be a great discussion. Again, feel free to create your own discussions in our group. So if you have something that you would like to talk with folks about, you can start a new discussion thread as well. We do ask that you save at least one resource to our group folder, items to review. So under that, you can create your own folder if you want to create an additional folder like I did, or you can just save it to that folder. And I'm going to put the reflection survey into the chat box. So this is the reflection survey from today. And so we encourage you to do this today while you're kind of finishing up. It should take about 2 to 3 minutes. So that's why we'll be ending about 2 minutes early. And it is required to receive credit if you want that certificate that we'll send you. And it's only available to folks who participated live. So please make sure you're not sharing that with others. If you need any help, remember that there's a support button that follows you around everywhere you go on the platform, and that's on the right-hand side. Or you can always go to the Help Center, or consider me your fairy godmother if there's anything that I can help you with after today. We're looking forward to continuing to collaborate with you, and if there's anything that you need, please reach out. Otherwise, we hope to see you next week. I'm going to pause the recording, but I'll hang out if anyone needs anything.